時間啦，或者我哋只係最緊要。
Is the appointed time? I think, well, with the declaration of interest, let's adopt what we have done in the last meeting. There is no need to repeat it unless there is something new. Please ask the officials to come in to join us.
Development Bureau 都 social welfare 我想去咗嚇。
Development Bureau 冇人嚟嘅，因為係阿 Lance Department。
係 Lance Department，OK 係啊。
所以就係講緊就係
education、
police 同埋 registry。social welfare 都唔係好多嘢，咁可以呢4個如果問完冇其他嘢可以即係考慮話我哋要去做先。
早晨，局長。
Good morning, Secretary. Welcome, secretaries, directors, government representatives, and the director of audit. This is a follow-up meeting of Chapter 1 of report number 68. Last time we have covered parts 1 and 2, and we will follow up. I would like to suggest a new practice. There are 7 or 8 government departments, directors, and bureau secretaries. I know time's precious to you, and I don't want to keep you here from beginning to end. What I'd like to do is that Tanya will be the main member to ask questions. We will first focus on disciplined services, that is, police, company registry, social welfare, and education. After we have done this part, you may leave. In this way, we don't need to keep you here the whole time. Are you prepared to do it, Tanya? Yes. Well, they can be free to do what they need to do. Perhaps we will first deal with part 4. Yes. This is part 4 of Chapter 1. It's in relation to police, company registry, social welfare, and education. You have 30 minutes, Tanya. Thank you. I would like to go to part 4. That is in relation to company registry, police, and then maybe the Education Bureau. Well, if my eyes haven't deceived me, then the Secretary for Education is still not here, but there is an Undersecretary here. Well, I think it is good for the Undersecretary to come here to get more experience. What are you insinuating, Chairman? Let's go to company registry. When it comes to the company's registry, I see that there are 6,619 companies. They are charities that are granted with a tax exemption. Most of them are by guarantee. And in the document, I think it's 4.8 and 4.9. It covers that in November 2016, as at that time, about 1,233 companies that have not filed annual returns between 2011 to 2016. And these are charities that are companies limited by guarantee. 21 companies have repeatedly failed to do so. 12 of them failed to do it for 5 years and 9 failed to do it for 6 years. So it's a repeated occurrence. And in 4.13 it says that currently the companies registry oversees over 1.3 million companies. And you think that charities are not an independent category, a separate category. So for the 1.3 million companies between 2011 and 2016, how many of them have not filed annual returns? Registrar. There are over 1.3 million companies on the register. The percentage of failure to file annual return stands at about 13%. And for those limited by guarantee, the percentage is similar. I would like to thank the comment of the Audit Commission, but I would like to respond to some points. The company's registry is responsible for enforcing and implementing the company's ordinance, and I've said that there are over 1.3 million companies on the register. Apart from those limited by guarantee, there are also public companies and also private companies. Our functions and statutory functions apply to all the companies, that is over 1.3 million companies on the register. So that is the amount of our target group. It's not just a particular type of company. And under the company's ordinance, there is no definition separating charities as a separate category. We have public companies, private companies, and companies limited by guarantee. So charities that are set up in the form of companies, the enforcement action will be, as opposed to enforcement actions taken against other companies, will be balanced. We agree with the comment of the Audit Commission, and we will continue to monitor charities that are formed under the company's ordinance to ensure compliance. Under the new company's ordinance, when it comes to filing of annual return by companies limited by guarantee, the new requirement has been streamlined under the new ordinance. We are working on our enforcement mechanism to enable us to take timely action against repeated cases. Just now you talk about timely and streamline. Is it what 4.4, paragraph 4.4 says? Particularly the latter part. There is something along the lines of summonses. Registrar, if we found cases of failure to file annual return, we will send letters to ask the company to file the return. And if the company fails to do so within the specified time, we will follow up on the case. Say, for example, if it is not filed within the time frame, we may consider initiating prosecution, and we may also consider striking the company's name off the register. Under the new company's ordinance, the requirement for filing annual return has been streamlined. In the past, under the old ordinance, the time limit of filing return depends on the date of the AGM of the company. The AGM of each company is different. So we would not know when the company should file an annual return in advance. Under the new ordinance, we have changed the requirement. It's in accordance with the year of the annual report that is the financial year, so that companies themselves will know when they should file the annual return. And after they have filed the first annual return under the new ordinance, we will be able to update the information in our computer system and store the date when annual returns are supposed to be filed, so that we can take timely action to follow up. Tanya, if I understand it correctly, just now you said that 13% of 1.3 million companies on the register, including private companies, public companies, and companies limited by guarantee. 13% of them did not file annual returns on time. But I also mentioned about repeated cases. Well, 12 companies have failed to do so by 5 years, 9 for a period of 6 years. So I would like to ask, out of the 1.3 million companies, is it commonplace? I thank Ms. Chan for the question. Well, how many companies have made these have committed repeated breaches out of 1.3 million companies? If we refer to paragraph 4.9 of the report, the Audit Commission has checked 6,523 companies and identified the 12 companies. And in paragraph 4.9, there has been clear explanation. 9 companies failed to do so for 6 years. It's not the case that we have not done anything over that period of time. 4 companies out of 9 have been prosecuted, and some of them resulted in conviction. For others, we continue to follow up on these cases. It's just that every time we initiate prosecution or require the company to give us what we ask for, it will take time. And in some cases, at the initial stage, we were not able to contact the responsible person. And it would take time to find information or send letters repeatedly to find the person. And in paragraph 4.9b, for the 4 companies that have been prosecuted, some were convicted. We would continue thereafter to chase them for annual return if they have not been furnished. And if our requests have been ignored, we will continue to follow up on that. If we find that they ignore our letters and they fail to appear in court, we will strike the name off the register. That's why you find information saying that we've started the strike-off process. 4.9c. 3 out of 9 companies we have taken the strike-off process against them. For the others, we have not done that because we simply cannot contact the company. So it's very likely that these companies have ceased to operate. It will take time for us to go through the process. Say, for example, 2 gazettos, because once a company is struck off, it would affect the employees, the creditors, and all the parties involved in company. And we also have to see if the IRD opposed to that or if any creditors are opposed to that. And if there are objections, we will have to terminate the strike-off process and to see if there is any valid reason. And we also have to see what actions are to be taken by the creditors. So every time when we initiate the strike-off process, we will have to tread very carefully, and it will take time. For 4.9a, 2 companies out of 9 have been missed because of our oversight. And I thank the Audit Commission for drawing our attention to that. We see that, there has been human error. The company has filed annual return, but we found that the information thereon was not complete, so the annual return was returned. And there has been some mixing up, saying that the annual return has been filed. And when follow-up actions were taken, these 2 companies were deemed to have furnished the annual return. That's why they've been left out. We have improved the mechanism, so the human error or error of judgment will not occur again. And as I've said, there is a new requirement under the new company's ordinance. The enforcement mechanism will also be improved. Well, we will take into account the financial year, so there won't be any chance of another human error. Just now you talk about repeated cases of late filing, and there is no record. And you said that there has been an improvement in your system. In the future, where there are companies that repeatedly fail to file or commit late filing, would you be able to identify them and follow up? Ms. Zhong, we will look into it. If we can, we will keep the information. When we take enforcement action, it's not just about initiating prosecution. It's also about striking off as well. So it depends on the circumstance when we decide whether to initiate prosecution or striking off. We don't just consider whether the company has been filing annual returns, because we conduct certain exercise regularly. We don't wait for the end of the year.
Say if they have failed to hand in these returns, then we may take action. Now I want to move on to 4.10. In 2016, among the annual returns, 3,219 charities were checked. As of November 2016, about 4% of the companies filed their documents late, involving 126 companies. Of these 126 companies, 35 companies were late by more than 90 days, and the longest is 120 days. Or rather, the longest delay was 229 days. Now, that's in Table 6. Less than 31 days, late by 31 to 60 days, 61 to 90 days, and over 90 days, nearly 3 months. And in the note, the longest delay in submission was 229 days after the due date. I want to ask, is it common? In comparison with the 1.34 million companies, what is the proportion or ratio? The Director. Thank you, Ms. Chan, for the question. This is not common, as I said earlier. As for those who fail to submit annual returns, the percentage is 13% on average. In overseas jurisdictions, in comparison with overseas jurisdictions, our number of 13% is not too bad. As for Table 6, in 4.10 of the report, the number of days elapsed after submission due dates are listed. That is in respect of the annual returns. And I want to make several points here. In the table, all the companies have submitted their annual returns, though they did not submit the returns on time. They were late. We go after them. We went after them, and they sent in the return. Ms. Chan is very careful in reading the table. In the note, the longest delay in submission was 229 days after the due date. I personally looked into this case with my colleagues. We prosecuted the offender. We followed the case up, and there was a conviction. And we went after them again, and they submitted all the annual returns over the years in one go after 229 days. Well, that's the result of going after them. As I said earlier, concerning the companies limited by guarantee, under the new companies ordinance, to improve enforcement and to enable the companies limited by guarantee to hand in the submissions on time, we introduce a scale fee. Now they will have to pay higher fees if they submit the forms, the returns late. Now under the old scheme, the registration fee is the same even if they submit the returns late. Now under the new companies ordinance, we put the companies limited by guarantee in line with those of the private companies. So if they're on time, $105 per year. But if they're late by 9 months, then the fees will be substantially raised to more than $3,000. More than 42 days, a certain amount higher than the basic sum. This is to encourage them to submit the annual returns in time. As for companies limited by guarantee, in rewriting the companies ordinance, we have considered that these companies receive charitable donations, and there is a need to enhance enforcement and transparency. Therefore, we introduce new provisions under the new companies ordinance. Number one, as for late submission of annual returns, they will be subject to a scale fee, or they will be subject to fees according to a certain scale. And number two, in submitting the annual returns, their financial accounts, directors' reports, auditors' reports will have to be submitted together. In the past, the requirements were different. Some companies limited by guarantee didn't have the need to provide financial accounts. But under the new companies ordinance, they will have to provide the financial accounts as well. This is to enhance transparency of these companies. The requirements will be simplified by companies for companies limited by guarantee. This will help to enhance the submission process. These measures have now been implemented under the new companies ordinance. Well, if I put it this way, do you think it's fair? Now, with these measures, in respect of going after late submission of annual returns and related documents, that will facilitate your going after of the companies who file in the requirements late. Well, under the new ordinance, new companies ordinance, things have been simplified. We know when they will have to submit the annual returns that enhance our enforcement mechanism. Now, under your current mechanism, when will you issue letters to go after them, reminding them of sending the returns? Well, it depends on the situation of the case. Say, if a case has not submitted the returns for 2 or 3 years, there is an immediate mechanism to send a letter to remind them. If it has not submitted the returns for a year, we will consider the dates after overdue. Say, if they are late by a month, then you will have a table listing companies which have been late for a month, or you will issue a reminder. Then after 3 months, you will take some other action. Now we know that you have a scale for charging them, but will you have a scale for taking action as well? As for follow-up action, depending on the nature of the case, action will be taken according to a certain scale. Say, if there is a delay in submission of annual returns, we issue a letter reminding the company to provide after 1 year or how many days after the due date. Well, if they have failed to submit the return for a year, we may not be able to immediately issue a letter. We do it by sample checking, but for cases late by 2 to 3 years, we will take action. Say, for 2 or 3, if a company has failed to provide the returns for 2 or 3 years, we may even consider striking off the registration. We'll have different kinds of action. Just a single action will not be comprehensive. I know that you have to deal with 1.3 odd million companies, but waiting for 2 to 3 years may be too late. According to the audit report, we are concerned about the charitable institutions because they may be receiving donations, though they have not done anything. That will be a loss to the donors. If you have to wait for 2 to 3 years, that may be too long. Will you help to enhance your computer system or update your system so that you can do it more efficiently? I thank her for Ms. Chen for her view. Perhaps I have not put myself clear. We do not wait for 2 to 3 years before we take action. In fact, every year, every month, even every week, we do take follow-up action. Every week, we take samples. We make sample checks. It is impossible for us to check 1.3 million companies every week. We do it group by group. Or batch by batch, and we do have sample checks every week. Would the director explain to Ms. Chan under paragraph 4.13, how can you strike a reasonable balance now in respect of the charities so that they can provide a service to the community, and at the same time they don't need to devote a lot of resources in complying with the filing of returns. With regard to companies limited by guarantee, as I have said earlier, in rewriting the companies ordinance in respect of the provisions, we have introduced certain requirements so that we can enhance our enforcement and also enhance the transparency of these companies. In the past few years, in respect of the submission returns by companies limited by guarantee, we have introduced various actions. Basically, all companies limited by guarantee we have follow-up on all cases in respect of 2015. Now, the Audit Commission has looked into 6,523 cases. Under 4.9a, there were 2 omissions. And there was a certain confusion in making an assessment. Now, many of the companies limited by guarantee are charitable institutions. Their directors are not remunerated. Most of them are not remunerated, and some of the staff members are volunteers, and some are just part-timers. We issue letters to them. We explain to them under the requirements under the new company's ordinance. We have pamphlets and booklets sent to them. We have issued letters to all the companies limited by guarantee. We have issued 2 rounds of letters to them. Apart from law enforcement, there is also publicity and public education. In our website, there is a compliance page reminding directors and senior officers of companies their responsibilities. There are posters and information booklets. For the companies, we also issue external circulars to the companies limited by guarantee. In the past few years, we put in a lot of resources in working with these limited companies. Yet, we have to strike a reasonable balance in respect of service. I know Kenneth has arrived, and he will take up. Yes, we are on part 4, Kenneth. We have jumped around a bit in respect of the LRC report in 2013. I want to confirm this. I've read the report several times. That report is not related to your department. No, that report is not related. Any other questions in respect of the company registry? If not, then I'd like to thank you for giving us your explanation. If we have further questions, we will send letters to you. Thank you very much for coming this time and the last meeting. So is she leaving now? Well, if you have questions, I want to focus on one department after another so that we do not need to hold up the directors for the whole meeting. Yes, I have a few questions. I have a question for the registrar. Paragraph 4.8. In 2011, 263 companies. 2015, 342 companies. In 2016, 830 companies, which failed to provide annual returns. The number was rising. Any explanation for that? The registrar? Well, Mr. Chairman, this is an estimated number. In 2015-16, some companies have yet to submit their annual returns, so that was not a fixed number. As for the situation in 2016, we have been following them up. Why the companies don't need to hand in their annual returns? Under the new company's ordinance, we have to check the financial year of the companies. In the transition, we have to check on the end date of financial year. That may be the end of March or end of December. If it is the end of December 2016, then after the financial year within 9 months, or 42 days after the 9th month of the end of the financial year is the deadline. So the 2016 cycle has not been completed. So the number is just an estimate by the Director of Audit. Any further questions? If not, then thank you very much for coming. And if we have further questions, we will follow them up with our letters. Okay, you may now be excused. Before you leave, I hope that I have not given you a wrong impression that we ask you to enforce the law with strong hands so that these companies are not able to cope because they have limited resources. I hope that you understand that these companies can provide service. Section 88 companies can provide a good service to the community as well as complying with the spirit of the law. Thank you, Chairman. That is exactly the point. It has reflected the situation of some companies. They ask for an extension of time because they are unable to complete their financial accounts and therefore they cannot submit their annual returns. We usually adopt a more humane approach. We do give them an extension so that they can complete their financial accounts and then complete their annual returns. I want to indicate, I want to state that we do give them some time, though they are late in making the submissions. And on some occasions, we ask them to provide the returns of the past 2 or 3 years. And they've informed us that they have to complete all the financial accounts before they can give us the annual returns. Kenneth, do you have further questions on this point? I have no question for the company registrar. Thank you. The company registrar. Next, Kenneth. Thank you, Chairman. With regard to Chapter 4, I want to ask questions on the Societies Ordinance. Paragraph 4.14. First, a broader question first. I usually start with broad questions so that you can be familiar with the issues. It is said that the Societies Office of the HKPF have over 1,000 companies, 1,000 charitable societies. 811 have granted tax exemption, have been granted tax exemption, and 189 were established charitable purposes. Who is to decide whether the society is for charitable purposes? There is no definition apart from Section 88. Why there are 189 which were established for charitable purposes? Who decide that?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, under charitable societies, under the Societies Office is defined by the HKPF. But of course, our definition may not be exactly the same as defined by the IRD. So you do have an ordinance or regulation in which you define societies established for charitable purposes. So what benefits are there for charitable societies? Well, under the IRD, of course, there would be some sort of tax exemptions. But under the societies ordinance, what benefits do you get for being charitable societies? Well, you don't get anything out of it. Yes, they are charitable societies and granted tax exemption status, but they do not get any advantages out of it. They just have a different name. Yes, so okay, it's a different label. So I would like to ask the commissioner, well, so you said there are some that there are registered applications, some are exempted applications. So what are the differences between the two, Commissioner? Well, all the information provided and all the legal responsibilities are the same aside from the name. So they actually bear the same legal responsibilities. Yes, I'm just confused. So those who don't need to, those are exempted from registration. So that's very confusing. So may I refer you to paragraph 4.15. So all particulars would need to be submitted to the police, and when any changes are made, you would have to inform the society's office, and when there's a closure, you also need to submit this information to the society's office. Well, let's say no changes were made during the period. Do those societies need to present a regular report to the HKPF? Well, we actually try to allow the public to form societies and their freedom. We just want to stop triads from being formed. Aside from those particulars such as changes being made, if nothing is changed within the time period, then they would not need to submit any report to us. If these are registered societies, then usually we would not monitor whether they are still active societies or not, because for any illegal activities involved, it would be under the regulation of other departments, and they would be subject to other ordinances. You said there is a department responsible for societies registration. How many people work in that department? And in the recent 5 years, newly registered societies and struck off societies, do you have the numbers for that? Because I do not see the number here. Is it stated in the appendix? Now, Commissioner, if you don't have the numbers, you can submit it to us after the meeting. Oh yes, I do have the numbers. I have the information. All right. Every year, on an average, we have an increase of 2,000 registered societies per year. So for those that have dispersed, we're talking about 100 societies per year, and for those non-existent societies, then it would depend on the number of staff that year. On maximum, we would handle about 1,000 societies, but if we are busy that year, then maybe we wouldn't have time to go through all the closure of the societies. You said that it would be unregistered when you find that it is not in existence anymore. So do you send a team in, or would you conduct site visits to the societies on a regular basis? So, Commissioner, perhaps you can tell us how many people work in this department, and then go through his questions one by one. Thank you, Chairman. In the society's office, we have 1 police officer and 5 clerks responsible for the work, and every year we receive on average 9,000 to 100,000 applications. Some are applying to set up new societies, and some inform us that they want to close down the societies. So on average, we deal with 90,000 to 100,000 cases. We would review the non-active societies. If there has been no communication between us for 10 years, such as no changes in place of business or change in name, and then we would review the cases. But these are not done on a frequent basis. It really depends on the workload during that year. So we do agree with the Audit Commission's recommendation to make this review regular. We would send out a letter to the society according to his registered address, and to ask whether it is still an active society. If we do not receive a response within 14 days, then we will put it in the we would gazette it, and if there's still no response after another 14 days, then it would not be registered under the society's office anymore. All right, so you have 1 police officer and 5 clerks responsible for this work. Do you think you have enough manpower? No, thank you, Chairman. We request a very simple information, the particulars of the office bearers, the name, the objects, and the address of the place of the business. And so this is very simple information. And according to the society's ordinance, we want to provide the people with the freedom in forming societies. We just need to target illegal societies or illegal activities. When we first set up the society's ordinance, we're just targeting the forming of triads. Therefore, we would not communicate with them on a frequent basis after they have been registered. It is only when they need to make changes to the society that they need to inform us in writing. So we handle 9,000 to 100,000 cases per year, and I think that 6 people are adequate for being responsible for this line of work. So you said that the society's office will follow up when workload is not heavy. Well, under paragraph 4.17, it said they need to keep the registered exempted society information up to date. So when the societies want to carry out events or activities, do they need to apply to the HKPF for approval? Under the society's ordinance, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. Or how about lion dance? Do you need to seek the police approval for lion dance activities? Yes, you need that for lion dance, and for some other public activities, you will need to submit it to us for approval. For a lion dance and public activities, those actually are not related to the society's ordinance. So when a society wants to carry out an activity on an event, then it would apply to a different department for approval. It would not notify us of these events and activities. And whether it is being registered will not affect its seeking approval for activities and events. These societies may conduct or carry out many activities, and some need to be approved by the police. So I hope that there would be more direct communication between the departments, so you don't have to waste so many resources to have to send out letters of inquiry to societies every 10 years or so? Well, I basically asked all my questions. But I would like you to explain 4.17C and 4.17D. So C said that the records of under C, it said that the records are different in the HAPF and in IRD, and D, the computer records are not very up to date. So can you explain the two circumstances under C and D? Thank you. I'd like to thank you for your recommendation. It's very reasonable that if we work well with the other departments, then we wouldn't need to send out letters of inquiry after 10 years' time. Well, going back to your question on 4.17C, that in 2014 we have done some review, and 53 registered exempted societies are not contacted the HAPF for 10 years or more, yet there has not been any follow-up. It is because in 2014 we did not have enough manpower, and therefore after sending out the first letter we did not follow up. And in D, 19 societies have been marked cancelled. Not in our computer records, but we have not yet updated the HAPF website. We examined the situation and found that when we updated our computer system, we needed to transfer the data. And it was due to inaccurate input data. We have now followed up and have updated all our records. Kenneth. I hope these incidents wouldn't happen again, and that all the records would be updated on a timely basis. I have another specific question. The society's ordinance is responsible by the HAB, am I right, or is it under the security? It should be under security. Do we have any one from security? No, I would ask the secretary to follow up on the question. Do I still have time, Chairman? Yes, go ahead. I'd like to move on to education ordinance. No, can we? So can we first finish up with the issues related to HAPF first? Well, yes, Tanya. Well, I heard that 6 colleagues are responsible for with 1 police officer and 5 clerks. Yes, but it seems to me that there are 1,000 new societies each year. So, and some of them need to be marked cancelled, some of them need to be updated. So these 6 staff enough, because the number of societies keep on increasing. I'm afraid that the workload will just become increasingly heavy. Well, yes, I heard him. He said, well, currently it's adequate. But if you're asking for a future, so you're saying, are you asking whether there are enough manpower in the future? Yes, because they're increase by 1,000 societies each year, and then there would be a lot of accumulated backlog. Thank you for your concern. Out of our 6 personnel, well, 1 is already 1 new staff because he joined in 2011, because originally there were only 5 people working that. Actually, you're not talking only an increase of 1,000 societies per year. It's actually more closer to 2,000. But with the audit recommendations, we have reviewed our workload and found that it could still be that we could we still have enough manpower for now. I'd like to ask about a report by the LR 2013, LRC 2013. Yes, at that time we did discuss that the charity events, that it could be regulated by other law enforcement agencies, one being the police. And the registered societies under the law do not need to submit financial reports to the society's office, and therefore it was only mentioned, but there were no recommendations made. Only these two are related to the police. So I'd like to also follow up. So after the report, the LRC report was out, and in 2015 there was one cross-departmental meeting. The commissioner attend. Well, you can. Commissioner, there were two meetings held. Remember, were you in attendance? Well, yes. And at that time, well, we were consulted and to see if we agree. Because at that time we're talking about charities organization, that if there is a new ordinance to monitor charitable organizations, and they asked us whether it could be put under the jurisdiction of the police, and we objected to it back then. Well, I don't think you can really answer for the Secretary for Security, but it seems that the email is sent to SB, and I assume SB stands for Security Bureau. I just want to confirm whether you also attended, because I'm not very sure of the attendance list. Oh, this is chapter 2. There is the attendance list in Gen 1, page 7. Oh, okay, I see someone by the name of Ao Yang. Yes. So we did send someone from the police, but I cannot speak on behalf of the Security Bureau. I'm sorry, because the email, I see that it is sent to the Security Bureau. Okay, but you're actually talking about the police. All right, Tanya. So will you also be responsible for follow-up on behalf of the police force for the LRC report? Because as you said, you were in attendance back in those meetings.
Well, the Secretary for Home Affairs is conducting a study about the recommendations of the Law Reform Commission. Last meeting you were there, would you continue? Yes, we would continue to be there, and they've asked us questions as well. Any other questions? No. Any other members who would like to ask questions of the Commissioner for Police about this report? If not, I thank you, Commissioner of Police, for coming to speak to us. If need be, we will inform you to come to us again. Thank you. Next, Tanya. Now we move on to education. Social welfare? Social welfare is part 3. I said part 4 before. I think Kenneth would very much like to ask questions. It doesn't matter. You go ahead. Just give me a second. Let's start with paragraph 4.21. Well, the public, when they read this, they need to know this. According to the law, subsidized schools will have to set up incorporated school committee. That is, if they are direct subsidies, they will have to an incorporated management committee under the Education Ordinance. In paragraphs 4.21 to 4.23, under the Education Ordinance, as at 2016, 826 aided schools have set up IMCs, incorporated management committees. They have to be responsible for managing funds and assets, whether these funds and assets come from school sponsors or the public, and they have to file financial statements accordingly. And in paragraphs 4.27 to 4.30 in tables 7 and 8, we found that in 2014, 305 schools submitted the information late, and 26 IMCs submitted the audited financial statements after a delay of over 120 days. And between 2011 to 2014, that is the 5 school years, 68, 41, and 71 IMCs submitted, committed late submission over a period of 3 to 5 years. For those who have submitted late for 5 years, 8 IMCs submitted the statements late over a period of 5 years, as long as 190 days. So I would like to ask how the Education Bureau follows this up. Would they send letters? Would they take the initiative to get more information? What action would they take? I understand that not every committee might be able to submit the statements on time. So sometimes discretion has to be exercised. But with the information I've just outlined, do you think there is some kind of systemic problem? Let me give you some information about prevalence. Well, if IMCs submit the information late, we will send out letters about a month or so later. And if we don't get any reaction from them, then in about 2 months we would follow up. These are schools, and our field offices have a very close liaison with schools in the respective district. The follow-up action will be elevated to a higher level. Say, for example, from the field office, from the district, from education officer, and then chief education officer. One of the reasons why there are late submissions is the internal governance, the quality of governance. And there is another reason, change of personnel. There may only be 1 or 2 people responsible for accounting of the school. So if there is a change of hands, then they may need time to take over, and it will take longer to have the statement audited. So there are many factors at play. We have regular contact with schools, so we get an idea of roughly what the operation of the school is like. And that is the reason why sometimes we would give some schools more slack. But we're talking about 8 IMCs with late submission for 5 years consecutively. If the average is 132 days, it's over for 4 months. And some of them submitted the information late by 1 year. So is it the case that it happens every year for that school, or what reason? Do you still consider it's appropriate to give them more slack, or you should dun them? Well, the Audit Commission has drawn our attention to schools with a poor performance for a few years. So we will continue to follow up and see what more we can do. We give schools assistance. And we will also see if we can maybe help them with manpower. We're talking about a small number. Of course, even one case is not ideal. We will follow up more closely with these schools, hopefully to improve the situation. Sometimes it's something wrong with their accounting system, or something happens within the school that have distracted them from handling this. And if it's over a number of years, usually they need more support and assistance internally. Well, if there aren't too many schools, that means these schools are suffering from a long-term problem. Have you actually looked into these schools to find out what problems they have encountered? Poor management or lack of resources? Because there are only 8 or 9 schools. I won't say that they have major problems with their management, but they would need more assistance in their financial management. If it is about resources, it's about allocation. We follow a system to allocate resources, and if most schools can work fine with the resources allocated, that means that those schools who can't do that may need support. And we can explain to them how other schools do it to help them. And we would do more to understand the situation. Well, if you notice problems, perhaps you need to give them assistance before they submit their financial statements. I won't say that it will help them file the information on time, but at least to shorten the delay. Paragraphs 4.24 to 4.29. The Education Bureau will promulgate guidelines. Some of them are to enhance transparency with schools' finances. And IMCs are asked to upload their audited account. And to do it onto their school website. They have gone through 30 schools, and none of them pay heed to what they were asked to do. You want to enhance transparency, but you're ignored. So do you really want it done? Because if one school ignores you, then you should know that you need to do more. Or is it the case that schools think it's very difficult for them to do? Where is the problem? If you think it is important, would you take more proactive action to get them to upload the information? Well, we talk about good practices in our guideline. We ask schools to enhance their transparency. They can upload their summary or upload the audited financial statement. And most schools have already uploaded their summaries. Of course, if they can do more to enhance transparency, it would be better. But currently, there is no mandatory requirement to ask schools to upload the audited financial account. I understand that, of course, if you give them the choice, they would choose the easy choice. Have you thought about why they would prefer to upload the summary instead of the audited financial account? In the summary, there will be information of audited accounts after collation. It will be easier to understand for members of the public, and they would only cover salient points. It will be more easily comprehensible than the entire audited account. Well, they can first deal with the summary. It would be even better if they would follow it with the audited account. But there is no compulsory requirement to ask for them to upload the audited account. So the summary, has all schools uploaded the summary onto their school website? Well, you need to find out if all schools have uploaded their the summary of the audited financial statements. You said that only 90% of IMCs have done that, so there is 10% of them. That means 3 schools have not done that. 90% means the majority of schools have already done it. Of course, for those who haven't done it, we will follow up. And in our guideline, it states that this is a good practice. So this is not mandatory. Well, the Undersecretary said that the summary will make it easier for members of the public to understand. And the IMC will have to deal with subsidy and donations. Would you at least make uploading of the summary compulsory? And then you will encourage IMCs to upload their audited accounts to enhance transparency. We would look into the members' suggestion. We have to strike a balance. We would like to first encourage schools who have not done so to do it first. Maybe give them some seminars before we move on to the next stage. Okay. Can you give us more information? Because we would monitor what follow-up work you have done after we have completed the report. We will need some time. It doesn't really matter. I think the matter will still be with us in October. That is the case for some other reports. I don't have any other questions. Mr. Lam, any questions? I don't have any problems for the Secretary for Education, but I do have some for Secretary for Home Affairs. We'll have to first finish with Part 4 before we move on to Part 3. He'll still be here. Well, I have questions mainly for the Home Affairs Bureau and the IRD. I know that you have to leave at 10:30. I think when you come back at 11, we will get there. can't be located. Well, there are no questions. If we do, if Mr. Leung has questions to ask you, we will deal with it then. We don't want to keep you here. We will ask you follow-up question in written form. Thank you. Next. Part 3. Social welfare. Social welfare is very much to do with lands as well. I think it will take more time. Then I apologize to the social welfare department. We need to keep you here a bit longer. Yeah, last time I thought we could do it within a shorter time, but something to do with land leases. Now, questions are for Secretary for Home Affairs, Mr. Lam. Is it part 2 or... I want to go to part 5. No, you can't. It will be jumping all over the place. If we jump to part 5, then it would upset our, it would lose our focus. Perhaps I ask the IRD? Well, you see we have Gen 6 and Gen 7 added. In Gen 7 there are a number of cases. Perhaps you will follow it up there. Sorry, but I don't have enough time. It doesn't matter. We will have a break at 10:30, and then we will come back. It's now 10:20. You will have 10 minutes. Okay. It will be time for me to warm up. Well, the reply from the IRD to many questions, I would like to follow up. Last time I asked a question. In cases D to J, they all involve directors receiving remuneration for various reasons: love gifts, transportation, subsidy, staff remuneration. I'm talking about starting from paragraph 2.13 from page 25 onwards. The IRD asked them to deal with it, and in some cases full or 50% of the amount paid have been refunded, some only 5%.
I want to ask the IRD, what is the standard for accepting the percentage or amount of refund? In Gen 7, the director has given an explanation. Can you explain to us the information in Gen 7? We have a written reply paginated as Gen 7. Starting from page 4, from E Roman 1, small Roman 1, explaining the 4 cases, D, E, F, G. Now, in answering Mr. Lam's question, please refer to case 6, case 7, and case 8. And how do they address the criteria or standard asked by Mr. Lam? Now, Chairman, I know that there are differences among the cases. They have different kinds of nature, and therefore the refund is different. The refunded amounts are different. But they are similar in the sense that the directors received a remuneration. Why some didn't give a refund, why some you require them to give them a refund before you reinstate the charitable status. Some groups therefore feel that they better not refund, they better not make a refund, It seems that you're different treatment to different organizations. Yes, it's about standard or criteria. We enforce the IRO. If you may refer to E3, E Roman 3, and also E Roman 2, we consider the nature of the case. Say for case 1, it is a reported case. It was reported in 2016. At the end of 2013-14, it didn't. These people resigned from the executive committee, and later we were told by them that they ceased making such a payment. Probably they thought that it was not in line with the M&A. These people were staff members. In Appendix A, in 2015, they still received salaries. Now, over the years, they received the amount as salaries. At the same time, they were the committee members of the executive committee. As for case E, in our paper, we explained that it was a church. Is it necessary to follow that up? Chairman, in fact, I have a group of questions for each case. I just gave an overall question just now. Now, last time I already heard his explanation. What are the differences? Is it that they can refund or they can refuse to make a refund, and you allow them? The director, the main concern is whether this is an organization set up for charitable purposes. In the review, we have discovered that some money was given to the directors, but in fact they were not directors. After all, apart from considering this factor, we didn't ask them whether they should make a refund or not. They were in breach of certain articles or provisions, and therefore they had to make certain remedies. And some institutions noted this, that it was in breach. Some noted that they would, some also said that they would make a refund. According to Gen 7, page 9, the third point, now it is said that if they give remuneration to the governance body without fundamentally affecting the charitable status, the IRD's view that according to the law, the IRD could not revoke the status, the charitable status. But under 2.14, there were different cases. Case E. Now you issued a warning letter. If there were similar situations, a tax-exempted status would be revoked. Under case F, a certain amount was refunded before you reinstated the tax exemption status. In case G, 50% of the remuneration was refunded by the director before you reinstated the tax-exempted status. Now, under Gen 7, the IRD does not consider that it's legally defensible to withdraw tax exemption status of the charity. Is that statement correct? Or is this the scenario in the report case F and G correct? Do you have the power to withdraw the tax exemption status or not? Now, the member refers to particular cases. Our position is what we have said in page 11, Roman 3. We have to consider whether the organization is complying with the charitable purposes. Certain actions may not be in line with the M&A, and we will remind the regulatory the governance statement, and then we will ask them, we will inform them and ask them to take follow-up action. We do not necessarily spell out the amount of refund or whether they should make a refund. Why? In the audited report, report, Director of Audit report, you issued a warning letter to them. You would revoke their tax exemption status if they do not make a refund. Well, if the situation is as what you have explained, then why you issue a warning letter that you will revoke the tax exemption status? As for the issuing of a warning letter is an individual case. If you may refer to 2.16a, our practice is that we will no longer issue a warning letter. We have no power to do so. So it's wrong to have issued the warning letter. You may say so. Well, I'll ask the question again. They have no authority to issue the warning letter. All government departments should comply with the law. On one hand, you say the law doesn't give you the authority. On the other hand, you issue warning letters to the organizations. And they follow your organizations, they follow your warning and make a refund, a full refund or a partial refund. So everything is a mess, Mr. Chairman. Now in para 2.16, the Director of Audit has pointed out that the IOD doesn't have the power. And you understand this. You can no longer issue such letters. And you therefore agree with the Director of Audit. Can you clarify this point? Okay, let me finish first, okay? Yes, this is the understanding. This is our understanding. Okay, please follow up. The Deputy Secretary, Chairman, concerning your question, let me explain to you the current practice of the Director of the IRD. According to the IRO, all the Section 88 organizations will be given tax exemption status. The IRD, in deciding whether an applicant can enjoy Section 88 concession, can only take into account whether such organizations have charitable purposes. In considering whether charitable purposes are achieved, as it is stated in the Director of Audit report, the Director of the DIR asks for the governance documents, the activities, and also the financial accounts. As for the M&A, there are basic requirements which will convince which will satisfy the DIR that the organizations or institutions are set up for charitable purposes. And that includes no remuneration for the directors and no distribution profits. And these are the basic requirements. The Director of Audit has found that in some organizations, individual directors have received remunerations. In the Gen 7 report, the Director of Audit explained, or rather the DIR explained, that the IRD encountered certain circumstances in which the organization did not deliberately give remuneration to their directors. out of greed. The argument was that just the giving of remuneration to the directors could not be the basis for the removal of the tax-exempted status. The overriding principle is whether the organization can continue to achieve its charitable purposes. If there is a serious breach leading to the DIR to suspect that the organization is not able to achieve its charitable purposes, then the DIR will remove the tax exemption status. But the IRD does not adopt a mechanical approach, in the sense that if no return had been submitted or remuneration was given to the director, and then the status would be taken away. The DIR will consider the seriousness of the breach, the nature of the breach, and also the relation with charitable purposes. Thank you. Tanya, you may follow. I want to ask this question. The DIR has been working in the IRD for a very long time, and he has been promoted to become the director. When did you start working with the IRD? 1982. When did you discover that you made your colleagues issued the letter wrongly in this report? Why you refused to provide the legal advice to us in 2003? Director. Gen 7. Gen 7. Which one? Please read out. The English version. An explanation is given for what reason DOJ advice is sought from DOJ in replying to our letter G and I, Roman 1 and 2. Now, he said that the Ombudsman's Office and the Audit Commission. In fact, in 2003, February, a report was issued. It was by the Ombudsman's Office out of its own initiative. And then also in 1997, PAC, in 1997, concerning the control of donations or fundraising for charitable purposes, they considered how to strengthen control, and therefore the IRD sought legal advice in 2003, September 2003. It was a general situation and did not seek advice on the individual case. In the second paragraph,
4th May of 2017, we provided the gist of the legal advice on this matter after consulting DOJ. The government does not consider that it is appropriate to disclose the legal advice it has obtained, which is subject to legal professional privilege. 主席，我明白呢個解釋，因為我自己都係呢一行。但係呢，如果根據2003年 PAC 當時嘅2001
according to the PAC report 1997, the government was very cooperative and frankly provided a piece of legal advice. It was the last 3 pages, on the last 3 pages of same paper, from Department of Justice to Commission of Inland Revenue. Mrs. Chu was a commissioner, and there were 2.5 pages of legal advice. Why this time the advice was not provided? Now you have Gen 8. Gen 8, page 238 and 239. That's in the 1997 report. So what are the reasons that we not able to receive that piece of legal advice? What reason for that? Do you want to hide something from us? Thank you for your view as for legal advice. Thank you for the question. According to, after discussing with the DOJ, their concern is that we should not disclose the internal document completely to the LegCo. That's their view. Yet, with regard to the legal advice, the gist of the legal advice to the LegCo, that's still okay. The legal advice is in respect of Gen 1. In fact, 2 points have been listed. And I can explain this. In 2003, according to the internal document, the reply had just 6 lines. So basically, we have given more than 90% of the legal advice. And what was missing is just the header and the footnote. We didn't hide any legal advice from members. We have given you the gist. Tanya. Chairman, I want to follow that up. I want to ask the Director of Audit, when was the first time you read the 2003 legal advice? Director. Because of this Director of Audit report, I read the legal advice. But that piece of legal advice had been with the group dealing with the tax exemption status of charitable organizations. It has always been there with the group. Chairman, if I may jump a bit. My apologies, one more point. The last time a member asked this question, the LRC in preparing the 2013 report was such a piece of legal advice given to the LRC? The Director, yes or no? You didn't need to try to squeeze an answer, but squeeze for an answer. But was this piece of legal advice given to the LRC when they compiled the report in 2013? Maybe we go back and check your files. Let me tell you, in the 2011 subcommittee, and also in the main report, I did not see any reference to this. Maybe we can give them a chance to check before they answer the question. We are trying to find facts here, and let's don't come to any conclusion here.
Well, let us give him a chance to respond to us. Let them go back to take a look before giving us the answer. Well, yes, I've actually raised this question last time, so I just want to remind him. So he could give this response in writing. And then I would like to now focus on withdrawal on tax exemption status, which is 2.4 bracket B and C, that there are 4 points raised, and there are 4 situations in which the tax exemption status could be withdrawn. So you said that according to the handbook there should be 4, and this has appeared in Gen 6, Gen 7, and this time there is the entire charitable donation section staff handbook. And this is the version of 2016 March, and inside maybe you would need to assist. Annex C, Gen 7 Annex C should be para 6.3. regarding the withdrawal of tax exemptions. And in there, it is stated 5 situations. This is the staff handbook. And then, and on the request, and on our request, Gen 7 response, there was a table. This is in accordance with para 2.4 bracket C in the audit report when a tax exemption status would be withdrawn. And you would see that first of all that this has ceased operations, which is dissolved. I think the most particular question I have is relation to reason 3, that is no longer qualifies for a status of a charitable institution or trust. So I would like to ask the Commissioner of Inland Revenue, under what circumstances would an institution or trust no longer qualify for a status of a charitable institution? So how would you explain that? Thank you. Roman numeral 3, which is 2.43, that if a charitable institution no longer qualifies for a status of a charitable institution or trust of a public character, then would take out its tax exemption status. Also, when we would look at the governing instrument of how it said, when we review it and we found that there have been changes, then we would look into what kind of changes has been made. And then we would also look at the activities or events carried out that to see whether they are charitable with charitable purposes. So when the charitable institutions have been confirmed as a charitable organization, they would need to notify us of any changes. And so if they want to either broaden or narrow the scope of operations, then they would need to submit it to us for approval. And we would also tell them whether there is a need to amend such changes. And so you can see that there are no such cases. Well, I repeat my question. Under what circumstances do you believe that it would adhere to Roman numeral 3? I'm not asking how you try to save it, because it has never appeared. So we want to ask, under what circumstances would you use this numeral 3? Because it is like 6.3.1.4 in your staff handbook. I see that you have this reason. Because this is the staff handbook for staff, but I don't see in your staff handbook under what circumstances would you withdraw the tax exemption status. Just now, Mr. Lam Chuk Ting asked a question on a remuneration for director, and you only sent out a letter, and the letter was erroneous as well. So under what circumstances would you believe you would need to withdraw the exemption? I want a specific example. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Well, if you could refer to Gen 1, page 17. I'm talking about the English version. That if this is there may be object cause, and if changes have been made, then we would tell them that if they want to make changes, then they will not be further approved. And if they do not carry out our recommendations, then we would withdraw their exemption status. Chairman, I'm sorry, I really can't find my the charitable purpose definition, because I think there should be a guide for the public, because there should be a guideline. I think that you need to request in the governing instrument how it should be defined as a charitable organization. For example, you are not able to give remuneration to directors. So is this one of the situations under Roman numeral 3? This is on page 17 of the Chinese version of Gen 1. Page 17 of Gen 1. I'm sorry, Chairman. So paragraph 9, they raise some of the clauses that you will need to add these requirements in the governing instrument. And so you can see A to G situations. So if they do not adhere to those, would you consider that they have fallen into Roman numeral 3? Well, yes, if we find there are such issues, then we will notify the charitable organization, and they would usually agree to put this into their governing instrument. So my understanding is that in Gen 1, page 17, so you have already listed out all the requirements, and if they're not able to so you have the discretionary power, and then is that how you look at it? Because yes, you can try to recover the money, but which you don't have the authority to do so. But you could have the decision not to include them under Section 88. So is my understanding correct? So we can first try to understand how this works, because we have to understand where your power lies. How do you approve Section 88, and what kind of regulations you need to comply with? Oh, thank you for your question. Is that right? Well, this staff handbook, this handbook, if they for the public, if they want to apply for Section 88, then we'll tell them that they basically have these clauses. These are the clauses that the governing instrument of a charity should generally contain. And when we review the clauses, or when we review the charitable organizations and found that there is discrepancy between what the charity does, then we would notify the charity and to give them an opportunity to explain it to us. And we would ask for remedial measures. So that is our usual practice. The charities, if they agree with us, would accept it. If they are able to explain to us what can then do or take in remedial measures such as recovering the remuneration to continue to satisfy the clauses in the governing instrument. We would look at each individual case to see how the charity gives remuneration to the director and to see whether we would continue to maintain its tax exemption status. Well, so you just have to okay, we all understand it. So if you notify them of any issues, as long as they adopt remedial measures, then it would be all right. So recovering the money is not one of the considering issues. Am I right? Well, we do not have the power to handle these issues. So basically, we would ensure that there are no discrepancies between what they do and in their governing instrument. And some charities make a huge effort, but they are not able to recover all the money. Also, so you should use the service spirit to explain your act of action. So how does the spirit of the charity comply with the spirit of these clauses, or if they're not able to carry out this, and you should explain that what they are doing is beneficial to society. Well, I haven't gone to reinstatement. Well, I'm trying to explain to the commissioner, but this is how I read the paper. So you look into the statement of the service before you reinstate the status. Oh, Chairman, reinstatement is a totally separate matter. Yes, I understand. But I'm just trying to help the commissioner. Commissioner is not able to voice out his authority. Oh yes, so my question is whether you agree that you have the power to recover money. Well, yes, you don't have the power to recover the money. Well, Chairman, since you mentioned reinstatement, according to the handbook, 6.1, I want to go back to Gen. It's at Gen 7. The Gen 7, which should be Annex C. 6.6.1 states out when a charity can apply for reinstatement. So there are two situations. One is it is untraceable, and second, it failed to give a reply to the department's inquiries. So I want to ask whether they're able to be reinstated according to these two reasons. I'll ask about the case later. I just want to ask whether this is the fact that you will only allow reinstatement under these two situations, and for other cases they will need to submit a new application. Commissioner, well, 6.6.1 states the majority of the cases. For, let's say the charity is not registered in the register of companies, then they will not be able to be reinstated. But this already gives a reason for most of the cases. Well, the reinstatement is different from considering its removal. For some cases, not yet removed, they have breached Section 88. So you consider whether to remove them. 6.6.1 is that that the status has already been removed, and now they're applying for reinstatement. Please explain it. Yes, the majority of the cases like that. If you look at 2.4c, we would also remove its status unless they want to be reinstated, that they are now working for the purpose of charity, and we will consider reinstatement. Tanya. Roman numeral 3, which is bracket C, Roman numeral 3, and you would remove its tax exemption status. So after being removed, would the charity need to reapply or apply for reinstatement? Well, the charity can apply for reinstatement. There is no major difference. Reinstatement means that a charity existing under the law, it is not yet dissolved. So what does withdrawal mean then? Well, it's okay. Take your time to explain it. Removal means remove its tax exemption status. Okay, so if the status has been removed, my understanding is that whether according to the audit report or the handbook, there are only 2 circumstances in which it can be reinstated. Now you say these only cover the majority of the cases. So what are the what do the other cases consist of? Commissioner. This is what I understood from my colleagues. Well, you can't cover all the cases in your manual because Section 88 involves around 9,000 charities. So in your manual guideline, A to G lists out what they need to comply with. They list out all the clauses. If they are not able to comply with the clauses, then you would not approve them with Section 88. But for some of them, they get tax exemption status, but you need to consider whether to remove them because of violations. Well, I know it's difficult to list out all the cases. We have to be reasonable. It's impossible to list out all the cases. So you need to look into their charitable purpose. Are they trying to provide good for the public? That you need to look into the spirit of the charitable purpose. Commissioner, yes, I understand your concerns. We have given a lot of information for members. If I could refer you back to Gen 7, page 3, C, Chinese version. Gen 7, page 3, C. In C, we have listed out the breakdown of charities with tax exemption status withdrawn by the IRD from April 2012 to September 2016. The table, as Tanya has said, listed out the different reasons for the withdrawal of tax exemption status. So you see, one is a very simple reason: the charity was dissolved or wound up. Tanya also asked about Roman numeral 2 and 3, as stated in the handbook, that a charity has ceased operation or installment, or that a charity no longer qualifies for the status of a charitable institution or trust of a public character.
So if you look at the information, you find that it's dealing with the different categories of withdrawal. And in the same document, Gen 7, and the staff handbook, page 26, the English version, Ms. Chan was very concerned about cases involving reinstatement. And that category is mostly to do with those that can't be reached. And if you refer to 6.63 of the staff handbook, you will see that Well, it says it is a reinstatement, but under 6.63, it will be treated as if it's a fresh application. So they have to prove to the IRD that they would meet the object of the organization. And they will have to furnish specified instruments and all necessary documents like a new application. I asked the question, let me be frank with you, is my interpretation of Roman 3 is that they are irregularities. That means that they have reached certain terms of the governing instrument, and you have the power to withdraw the tax exemption status. That is the responsible way to deal with it. If you want to reinstate their status, and if these companies have shown that they were irregular, they were irregular cases, they would have to prove to you again. But now I found that well, that is not the case. There are just 4 to 5 scenarios. That means if there has been some incompliance in the past, you could still review the case and reinstate their status, or do they have to make a fresh application? You have to make it clear, because if they have committed non-compliance, it's rather serious. It's not like those cases when you cannot reach them, or when they ask for the status to be deleted or withdrawn. We use the word reinstatement. As the staff handbook said, that we would, an application for reinstatement, we treat it as a fresh application. They have to furnish all the documents. But what about a case when it's not yet disqualified? The tax exemption status has not been withdrawn. Then, so you would be considering whether to withdraw the tax exemption. I think there are a number of those cases. When it comes to reinstatement, they are under paragraph 6.6. They'll be treated in the same way. Tanya, I'll ask other members to begin. Well, you will continue, and after you, we will take a break. Your question has not been answered. That's right. I still don't understand how they interpret withdrawal. They think that a withdrawal is a major matter, and a review is to decide whether to continue with that status. If it's discontinued, does it mean it's withdrawn or it's just been shelved? So, has the status been cancelled? Do they still have the status under Section 88? When it's a withdrawal, it's taken away, but they have the power to ask. So it's a new case. You will have to check to see if they meet their object. Well, if we will treat it as a new case, so it's a charity A, B, C, then there may not be Section 88 status. You take it away, and then they do something, and then they make a new application, and you treat it as a new application. Is that right? That's right. Tanya, I need time to digest what the commissioner said. We have Gen 1 to Gen 7, and then Gen 8. Let me go back to the legal advice. It's Gen 7. That's a part. Well, the content of the legal advice has been incorporated into the answers. We ask about section 40 of Cap 1. Perhaps we'll take a break first. Thank you. 15 minutes.